The crimson dust swirled across the jagged horizon of Intar 7, a forgotten outpost on the edge of civilized space. The year was 2436 FT. Once a pioneering base for the Gravak species, armored extraterrestrials with luminescent shell patterns, the planet had been abandoned to the mercy of its harsh elements, metallic rust storms, seismic tremors, and the unforgiving twin suns that baked its surface by day and froze it by night. A drone recording flickered across the command screen of the Gravak survey team that had just landed. The footage showed a group of Gravak officers releasing a Kragar, an apex predator, native to Intar 7. The creature resembled a four-legged armored skeleton, its body encased in metallic plates that clinked as it moved. Its razor-sharp teeth glinted in the harsh sunlight, and acidic saliva dripped from its jaws, burning small holes in the red dust beneath. "Release the Kragar into the canyon," Commander Inverix ordered from the base. "Nothing will survive its hunt. We need to ensure the area is clear before establishing mining operations." The survey team complied, lowering the beast into the narrow canyon with mechanical arms extending from their ship. They expected the Kragar to flush out any potential threats hiding in the red labyrinth below. What they never anticipated was what happened next. The drone camera zoomed in as a shadow materialized from the swirling dust. Not Gravak, not robot. A human female, covered in dirt and dried blood, stood directly in the Kragar's path. Major Rinka Sol, once reported missing after her Earth reconnaissance team collided with Gravak forces during the post-apocalyptic collapse, now stood alone on this desolate world. In her hand was a jagged femur bone, fashioned into a crude scythe. Her face bore a permanent streak of blood that had dried into her skin, and her eyes reflected nothing but cold determination. The Gravak operators watched in disbelief as the human didn't run. Instead, she waited, femur bone raised like a primitive weapon. The Kragar charged, its massive jaws opening to reveal 3 rows of serrated teeth. The beast lunged, and for a split second, the Gravak thought they were witnessing the human's final moments. Instead, Rinka pivoted, driving the sharpened bone directly into the creature's throat. With a sickening crack, she pushed it deeper, puncturing through the armored plates that had evolved to withstand the harshest conditions on Intar 7. Blood and viscera erupted as she twisted the bone, severing the creature's spine. The Gravak observer's face contorted in horror, their mandibles clicking in distress. A human! It just killed a Kragar with the bone of its own kind? The moment the bone penetrated the Kragar's armor, panic spread through the entire Gravak team. They had considered humans weak, incapable of facing an apex predator without advanced weaponry. But the sight of Rinka tearing apart their hunting beast shattered every assumption they'd made. Standing over the fallen beast, Rinka looked directly at the hovering drone. She raised the bloodied bone and waved it defiantly at the camera, her message clear, even without words. She knew they were watching, and she wasn't afraid. At the temporary command station, General Korvek received the disturbing footage. His armored exoskeleton creaked as he leaned forward, compound eyes narrowing at the display. "Eliminate her," he ordered, voice cold and mechanical. Whatever the cost. The first Gravak strike team mobilized quickly, 12 warriors in matching armor, carrying energy cluster weapons. They moved with the confidence of apex predators themselves, believing their superior technology and numbers would make quick work of the lone human. "Deploy heat-sensing drones," Lieutenant Velrix commanded, his voice steady despite the unsettling footage they had all witnessed. "Once we have her location, we'll eliminate her with plasma burst from a distance. No need for close engagement." They scanned the canyon systematically, searching for heat signatures among the red rocks. But Rinka had prepared for this. She lay hidden among the rubble, her body covered in a mixture of metallic mud and Kragar remains that masked her thermal signature. When the first Gravak scouts entered her field of vision, she triggered a makeshift smoke bomb, a mixture of chemicals harvested from the planet's surface and the Kragar's body. The thick, acrid smoke temporarily disabled the Gravak's multispectrum sensors. In the confusion, Rinka moved like a ghost through the haze. The first warrior died without seeing his attacker, a sharp crack as his neck vertebrae separated. The second managed to turn just as the bone scythe sliced through his armor joint, severing arteries and connective tissue. By the time the third realized they were under attack, two more had fallen, their armor split open with surgical precision. "Contact! We have Kant!" The transmission cut short as Rinka emerged from the smoke, driving her weapon through the communication unit and into the Gravak's throat. When the smoke cleared, 8 Gravak warriors lay dead, their bodies showing no plasma burns, no bullet wounds, only precise, brutal damage inflicted by hand. The remaining 4 retreated in disarray, their confidence shattered. The drone footage of the aftermath spread through the Gravak command like a virus. Armored bodies sprawled across the red dust, their exoskeletons torn open by what appeared to be nothing more sophisticated than sharpened bone and raw strength. "She moves like a demon across the wasteland," one survivor reported, mandibles quivering. "No heat signature, no predictable pattern. She simply appears." General Korvek's anger reverberated through the command chamber. "This is unacceptable. Prepare a full-scale response." He turned to his lieutenants, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "No single human defeats Gravak forces. This ends now." The response was overwhelming. 3 heavy mechanized invasion vessels descended on Entar 7, carrying 75 armored Gravak soldiers. Each warrior wore an exosuit equipped with thermal shields, high kinetic plasma weapons, and enhanced sensory arrays. With them came 4 two-headed Kragar hybrids, genetically modified for maximum aggression and equipped with neural implants for handler control. "Scorched Earth Protocol," Commander Enverix announced as they deployed. "Destroy any structure where she might be hiding. Flush her out, then eliminate her." The attack was relentless. Missiles targeted suspected hiding places, while drones mapped every inch of the canyon. The two-headed Kragars were released to hunt by scent, their handlers confident that no human could evade such a comprehensive assault. But Rinka had been preparing. From the remains of the first Kragars she had killed, she constructed a macabre monument, arranging the bones into a crude representation of the Gravak Emperor's palace, a symbol of their power. In the center, she used a mixture of blood and metallic minerals to inscribe a message in Terran script: "One person, one will." As the Gravak forces advanced, they triggered the first of her traps: explosive devices crafted from Kragar acid sacs and metallic compounds that ignited when the exosuits passed nearby. The canyon filled with toxic smoke that scrambled their sensors and burned through respiratory filters. When the first squad pushed through the smoke, they found themselves in a killing zone. Rinka had learned their attack patterns. She targeted the vision modules of their exosuits, striking with her energy blade, an old technology she had preserved from her days as a commando. Each strike was precise, disabling rather than destroying, allowing her to claim their weapons for her next trap. The two-headed Kragars charged forward, but Rinka had prepared for them too. She had damaged the canyon walls at strategic points, triggering a rockslide that crushed 2 of the beasts. The third, she wounded with a makeshift spear, piercing its neural implant and sending it into a frenzy that turned it against its Gravak handlers. The fourth and final Kragar she did not kill. Instead, she mounted its back after disabling one of its heads, riding the wounded creature like a war beast straight into the main Gravak contingent. The sight of a human controlling their apex predator sent shockwaves through the Gravak ranks. She drove the beast forward, using its mass to crush exosuits and its remaining head to tear through armor. When the beast finally collapsed from its wounds, Rinka stood atop its body, her energy blade glowing with pale blue light. She faced a drone camera directly and proclaimed, "I am of Earth. The footage reached Korvek in real time. More than 50 of his elite troops lay dead or wounded, not from energy weapons or advanced technology, but from close-quarter combat wounds, crushed exoskeletons, pierced joints, and broken necks. The human had turned their own beasts and environment against them. "This is no ordinary human," Enverix warned, his voice trembling. "Our intelligence suggested their commando units were eliminated during the collapse." Korvek's rage was palpable. "She is one human on a hostile planet. We are the Gravek Empire. This ends now." Recognizing that she had turned the canyon into a psychological fortress, General Korvek ordered a total assault on the temporary Gravek command post on Intar 7. If she would not be drawn out, they would force a confrontation on their terms. The assault force was formidable: 30 heavy Gravek infantry, 5 hybrid Kregars, 4 small mech units equipped with high-capacity plasma cannons, all supported by a squadron of heavy combat drones. "She will come," Korvek declared, climbing into his Titan armor, a 500-kilogram exoskeleton integrated with plasma lance technology. "And, when she does, I will end this embarrassment personally." But Rinka had anticipated this move. Over weeks of isolation on Intar 7, she had studied the planet's seismic patterns and geological composition. She had prepared a system of fire trenches and geothermal traps extracted from the planet's core, devices that could temporarily neutralize all Gravak electronic signals. As the Gravak forces approached their own command post, the outer doors sealed suddenly. The security system, compromised by Rinka's primitive but effective sabotage, locked them out of their own fortress. Moments later, the ground erupted in rings of fire, columns of red flame shooting skyward. Inside the command center, Rinka faced General Korvek directly. The Gravak commander towered in his Titan armor, plasma lance humming with destructive energy. "What are you?" he demanded, sensors struggling to lock onto her heat signature. "Why can't I detect your temperature?" Rinka didn't answer. In the flickering firelight and black smoke, she appeared and disappeared like a phantom. She had coated her body with residual plasma fragments collected from spent Gravak weapons. The charged particles disrupted the sensors in Korvek's armor, causing erratic readings and targeting failures. "Stand and fight!" Korvek roared, swinging his plasma lance in a wide arc. The energy weapon cut through control consoles and structural supports, missing Rinka by centimeters as she rolled beneath the strike. She countered by hurling a concentrated plasma fragment at the joint servos of Korvek's armor, causing a momentary power fluctuation. Using the opening, she slid beneath his guard, driving a Kregar bone into the knee joint of the Titan armor. The impact cracked the reinforced plating, damaging the mobility circuits. Korvek stumbled, his balance systems compromised. "You will die here," he snarled, charging his lance to maximum output. The weapon glowed with purple energy, threatening to vaporize everything in its path. But Rinka had wrapped herself in dried Kregar hides, the naturally heat-resistant material absorbing much of the plasma discharge. She ducked beneath another sweeping attack, then leaped upward, her energy blade aimed at the power core visible through the damaged knee joint. The blade penetrated the armor, slicing through the electronic heart of the Titan suit. Energy containment failed catastrophically. Purple plasma erupted from every seam of the armor, a miniature star collapsing in on itself. Korvek's final scream was lost in the deafening explosion that followed. The command center's reinforced walls crumpled under the force of the blast, and a column of violet fire shot skyward, visible across the canyon landscape. When the surviving Gravak forces regained communication and approached the ruins, they found nothing of their general except scattered fragments of his once mighty armor. Of Rinka, there was no sign, only the smoldering ruins of what had been their foothold on Intar 7. The defeat sent shockwaves through the Gravak Empire. The High Council convened an emergency session, facing an unprecedented crisis: the loss of a flagship general, 3 elite combat units, and hundreds of warriors, all to a single human opponent. "We must either obliterate Intar 7 entirely, or withdraw permanently," argued Council Elder Trovak. "This human has made the planet more costly than any resources we might extract." The Celestial Tribunal, a neutral alliance of spacefaring species, called an emergency session to redefine borders. They formally declared Intar 7 a war exclusion zone, too dangerous for any species to claim or inhabit. As for Rinka Sol, she vanished into the Red Canyon's under cover of darkness. No one witnessed her departure from Intar 7. However, the monument of dried Kragar bones she had built, still bearing the Terran inscription, "One person, one will," became the longest-standing declaration of war in Gravak history. 5 years passed. New generations of Gravak warriors underwent mandatory training in the Night of Intar simulation, a virtual recreation of the canyon filled with fire traps, geothermal triggers, and the ever-present shadow of a human figure. Unlike other combat programs, this one taught retreat rather than engagement. The legend of Rinka Sol became a cautionary tale throughout the Empire. Never underestimate a cornered human, for they may become the predator. In the final days of the 7th year, after the Entar incident, a mixed expedition of Gravak Vedanai explorers, the Vedanai being a neutral species known for scientific pursuits, detected an old Terran signal, metallic tapping and heavy breathing, originating from a damaged spacecraft buried beneath the ice ocean of an uncharted moon beyond Gravak territory. Before the signal faded completely, they clearly heard Rinka Sol's voice, "Send more." As they approached the crash site, they glimpsed a female figure rising from the frozen waters, holding a smoking beast bone in her hand. Her eyes were unwavering, showing no sign of fatigue or surrender. The final image froze in that instant. Rinka had not rested, and the universe dared not send more. The sun beat mercilessly upon the red landscape of Intar 7, casting long shadows across the canyon where it had all begun. 3 years after the defeat of General Korvek, a new Gravak expedition arrived, this time a scientific mission under heavy guard. Their purpose was not conquest but study. They needed to understand what had happened, to analyze how a single human had devastated their forces so completely. Lead researcher Zeknar moved cautiously through the ruins of the former command post, scanners actively seeking any sign of human presence. "The chemical composition of the soil has changed," he noted to his security detail. "High concentrations of processed metals and organic compounds not native to Intar 7. "Remains of our troops," Commander Voss replied grimly, his hand never straying far from his weapon. "And the Kragars." They followed the winding path deeper into the canyon, toward the location where surveillance had last captured images of Rinka Sol. The bone monument still stood, weathered but defiant against the elements. Around it, they discovered a network of shallow caves that had served as her shelter and workshop. Inside, the walls were covered with detailed maps of Gravak patrol routes, anatomical drawings of Kragar vulnerabilities, and chemical formulas for the smoke bombs and acid traps she had deployed. Most disturbing were the scraps of Gravak exosuits, arranged methodically, not as trophies, but as study materials. "She was learning," Zeknar whispered, running a scanner over the cave walls. "Each encounter taught her how to be more effective against us." The security team shifted uncomfortably, eyeing the shadows as if expecting Rinka to materialize from the darkness. They had all undergone the Night of Intar training simulation, and standing in the actual location sent cold tremors through their exoskeletons. "How did she survive the elements?" Voss asked, examining a crude water collection system fashioned from Kragar bladders. "Our environmental analysis indicated the temperature fluctuations alone should have killed any unprotected human." Zeknar pointed to a section of the cave where thermal insulation had been created, using layers of Kragar hide and metallic dust. "Adaptation. She used our own beasts to protect herself from the environment." He paused at a small alcove containing what appeared to be medical supplies, primitive sutures made from tendons, antiseptics derived from mineral deposits, splints fashioned from bone. She was injured multiple times, he observed, yet continued fighting. The expedition continued their analysis for 3 days, compiling a comprehensive record of Rinka's survival techniques and battle strategies. On the final day, as they prepared to depart, they discovered something they had overlooked, a small recording device of Terran design tucked into a crevice near the monument. When activated, it played a single message in Rinka's voice. To whoever finds this, I am Major Rinka Sol, Earth Special Operations Division. My team was ambushed by Greyvac forces while investigating the collapse of Outpost Zeta-9. I alone survived. They hunted us like animals, dissected Captain Zara Trask, while she still lived to study human resilience. I watched through a ventilation shaft as they cataloged her organs and documented her screams. The recording paused, filled with the sound of labored breathing before continuing. What happened here wasn't war. It was justice. One life for those you took. Remember me when you look to the stars and wonder if humans still exist out there. We do. And we remember everything. The message ended with coordinates, numbers that made no sense to the Greyvac researchers until they consulted star charts from the period before the human collapse. The coordinates pointed to Earth's solar system, specifically to a planetoid in its outer reaches that had not appeared in any Greyvac survey. Upon their return to Greyvac space, the research team submitted their findings to the High Council with a troubling conclusion. The human known as Rinka Sol did not merely fight for survival. She fought to send a message that humans, despite their supposed extinction, remain a force to be reckoned with. The Council, shaken by the implications, classified the report and doubled the buffer zone around former human territories. The Night of Antar training program was expanded to include psychological conditioning against human psychological warfare tactics. Meanwhile, beyond the reach of Greyvac sensors, on the frozen moon where the mixed expedition had detected Rinka's signal, something stirred beneath the ice. The damaged spacecraft, partially repaired using salvaged parts and ingenious adaptations, hummed with renewed energy. Inside, Rinka Sol worked methodically, her movements precise despite the years of isolation and combat. The walls of the ship were covered with schematics, not just of Greyvac technology, but of something more ambitious. She had been monitoring Greyvac communications, learning their language, their culture, their weaknesses. She was no longer alone. 5 cryogenic pods lined the ship's medical bay, each containing a human form, survivors she had located and rescued from scattered outposts across the sector. They slept, waiting for the moment she would wake them. On a makeshift workbench lay her most ambitious creation, a transmitter powerful enough to reach beyond the local sector, to contact the rumored human colonies that had fled beyond the reach of the galactic powers. The message was simple. Antar 7 is secure. The path is open. Return. The legend of the lone human who defied an empire was about to become something far more. The first chapter in humanity's return from the brink of extinction. The signal broadcast from Rinka's ship spread across subspace frequencies, encoded in patterns that appeared as random static to most monitoring systems. But to those who knew what to listen for, who still carried the old Earth encryption protocols, the message was clear. 6 months after her transmission, a sleek vessel of unfamiliar design approached the frozen moon. It bore no identifying markings, its hull composed of materials that absorbed rather than reflected sensor sweeps. It landed a kilometer from Rinka's position, its engines barely disturbing the perpetual ice storms. From it emerged 3 figures in environmental suits, unlike any Greyvac design, more fluid in movement, almost predatory in their efficiency. They approached Rinka's ship cautiously, weapons ready but not aimed to threaten. When they reached the airlock, one removed their helmet, revealing a woman with features similar to Rinka's, human, but with subtle modifications. Eyes adapted for low-light conditions, dermal layers reinforced against radiation exposure. "Major Saul," she said, her voice carrying through the thin atmosphere. "Commander Alara Vega, Terran Remnant Forces. We received your signal. Is it true what you've done on Entar 7? Rinka emerged from her ship, the years of isolation evident in her gaunt features, but not in her posture, which remained combat-ready. "It's true. The Gravak have declared it a forbidden zone. They believe one human can decimate their forces. Imagine what they'll think when they learn there are more of us." Commander Vega smiled, a predator's expression. "Show me everything." The Terran remnant, as Rinka learned, had not been idle during the years of presumed human extinction. Forced to the edges of known space by the aggressive expansion of species like the Gravak, they had adapted, evolved, and prepared. What they had lacked was a foothold, a psychological advantage to leverage against numerically superior forces. Rinka Sol had given them exactly that. Within a year, a hidden base was established beneath the ice moon's surface, shielded from detection by technologies the Gravak had never encountered. The 5 survivors from Rinka's ship were awakened and integrated into the remnant forces. More importantly, the legend of Entar 7 spread through covert channels to every pocket of human resistance across the sector. The Gravak Empire, meanwhile, faced internal strife. The military demanded increased funding for anti-human defense systems, while the civilian government questioned the allocation of resources to combat what they viewed as an isolated incident. The seed of fear Rinka had planted grew into factional divides, weakening the once unified empire. 3 years after Commander Vega's arrival, the Terran Remnant launched their first coordinated operation, not a direct assault, but a series of strategic infiltrations. Small teams penetrated Gravak outposts across 12 systems, leaving behind evidence of human presence, bone markers similar to Rinka's monument, disabled security systems, and occasionally, a single Gravak officer found incapacitated with surgical precision. No casualties, no destruction, just the unmistakable message: "We can reach you anywhere." The psychological impact was devastating. Gravak military discipline began to fracture as soldiers refused assignments to remote outposts. Trade routes were altered to avoid sectors with reported human activity, crippling economic stability in the Empire's outer regions. In the High Council chambers, Elder Trovak addressed the growing crisis. "We face an enemy that defeats us without engaging in direct combat. They have weaponized our fear." A younger counselor, Kavnor, responded with growing frustration. "We are the Gravak Empire. How can we be brought to our knees by ghost stories of a single human?" "Because," Trovak replied solemnly, "that single human showed us our vulnerability, and now her people exploit the weakness she exposed." On the Ice Moon, now codenamed Bastion, Rinka Sol had become something more than a soldier. To the growing Terran forces, she was a strategist, a teacher who instructed new generations in the art of asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. Her methods were incorporated into standard training, her improvisations with limited resources studied as tactical doctrine. Commander Vega approached her one evening as she observed a training exercise, recruits learning to disable Gravak exosuits with minimal equipment. "The Celestial Tribunal has requested a meeting," Vega informed her. "They wish to discuss the Entar Protocol with its creator." Rinka raised an eyebrow. "They know I'm alive?" "They suspect. They've observed our operations and recognized the pattern. They're not seeking to expose us. I believe they want to negotiate." The Celestial Tribunal, composed of representatives from species that maintain neutrality in galactic affairs, had been monitoring the growing tension between the resurgent humans and the declining Gravak Empire. Their concern was not the potential fall of the Gravak, but the stability of the sector as a whole. When Rinka entered their chambers aboard the neutral station Concordance, she faced not accusation, but curiosity. The tribunal representatives, ranging from the crystalline viridar to the gaseous nth, regarded her with what passed for respect among their diverse physiologies. "Major Rinka Sol," began the viridar delegate, light refracting through its faceted form. "Your actions on Intar 7 have altered the balance of power in this sector, more significantly than any fleet action in the past century. We seek to understand your intentions." Rinka stood straight, her posture reflecting years of military discipline despite her time in isolation. "My intention was survival. The Gravak declared humans vermin to be exterminated. I proved that even vermin have teeth." "And now?" asked the nth representative, its vaporous form swirling with colors that indicated intense interest. "Your people implement what our analysts call the Intar Protocol across Gravak space. Is this still about survival, or has it become vengeance?" "Neither," Rinka replied. "It's negotiation. The Gravak only respects strength. We're demonstrating that humans possess strength they cannot counter with conventional means." The tribunal conferred briefly before the Viridar spoke again. "We propose to facilitate formal recognition of human sovereignty in designated systems, with Intar 7 as a demilitarized memorial zone. In exchange, the psychological campaign against the Gravak would cease." Rinka considered the offer. "The Gravak hunted us to near extinction. They'll do so again if they believe they can succeed." "Perhaps," the nth acknowledged. "But your tactics have ensured they no longer believe this. The legend of Intar 7 has been inscribed into their cultural memory. Even their children know to fear the human who defeated an army with nothing but bone and will." After extensive negotiations, the tribunal drafted the Sol Accords, establishing recognized human territories and mutual non-aggression pacts. The Gravak, facing economic collapse and military demoralization, reluctantly agreed to the terms. When Rinka returned to Bastion, Commander Vega questioned the wisdom of ending their campaign while they held the psychological advantage. "We haven't ended anything," Rinka explained, examining a holographic map of the newly recognized human systems. "We've established legitimacy. Now, we rebuild openly, while maintaining the one advantage the Gravak can never overcome." "Which is?" Vega asked. "They believe we defeated them when we were at our weakest. Imagine their fear now that we can operate at our full strength." Over the following decades, human civilization re-emerged into galactic society. Their new worlds were fortified not just with military installations, but with a reputation built on the foundation of Rinka Sol's stand on Intar 7. Diplomatic envoys to human systems were invariably shown the Night of Intar historical exhibit, featuring recovered footage of a lone human defeating the Empire's elite forces. The Gravak, their expansion halted, turned inward to address the societal fractures that had developed during their conflict with humanity. Their military doctrine underwent complete revision, emphasizing quality over quantity and incorporating lessons learned painfully on the red sands of Intar 7. As for Rinka Sol herself, she declined all political positions in the new human government, preferring to establish a training academy on a small moon orbiting one of the core human worlds. There, she taught not just combat techniques, but the philosophy that had sustained her through isolation and seemingly hopeless odds. "The greatest weapon," she told her students, "is not technology or numbers, but the unbreakable conviction that you will prevail, whatever the cost." On the 10th anniversary of the Sol Accords, a Gravak delegation made an unprecedented request: permission for a pilgrimage to Intar 7. Led by the son of General Korvek, the delegation sought to honor both their fallen warriors and the human who had changed their understanding of warfare. Rinka, now in her 50s, but still formidable, agreed to accompany them as both guide and guard. As they stood before the bone monument, now preserved in a stasis field as part of the demilitarized memorial, young Korlek addressed her formally. "My father believed in the superiority of our species," he said, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was a sign of respectful disagreement with an ancestor. His defeat shaped our current generation. We no longer see humans as prey, but as equals worthy of respect. Rinka nodded, her gaze fixed on the inscription she had carved years ago. One person. One will. Do you regret any of it? Korlek asked. The lives taken? The fear instilled? Rinka considered the question carefully before responding. I regret that it was necessary, but given the same circumstances, I would do it again. Some lessons can only be taught through consequences. As they departed in Tar 7, leaving behind both memories and ghosts, Rinka gazed up at the stars, visible through the canyon walls. Somewhere out there, humanity continued to rebuild, stronger than before, because they had learned what she discovered in isolation, that the will to survive, to prevail against all odds, was the greatest force in the universe. The legend of Rinkasol evolved over generations, from historical account to cultural touchstone to mythic archetype. In human education centers, children learned of the Major, who had faced an empire alone and forced it to retreat. In Grovak historical archives, military theorists studied the Sol paradigm of asymmetric warfare. And on 100 worlds across the galaxy, when beings of any species faced overwhelming odds, they would whisper the words that had become synonymous with indomitable spirit. One person, one will. The red dust of Antar 7 continued to swirl across the monument of bones. Preserving the memory of the day, a legend was born, not from grand fleets or advanced technology, but from the simple, unbreakable determination of a human who refused to be the last of her kind. On rare nights when both moons aligned, locals swore they could see a silhouette moving through the canyons, a lone figure carrying a bone scythe, patrolling the borders of the legend she had created. Whether apparition or reality, the effect was the same, a reminder that some forces transcend physical strength, that will and determination could reshape the destiny of entire civilizations. And deep in space, beyond the reach of most sensors, a small ship occasionally appeared near troubled zones, territories where stronger powers threatened to overwhelm the vulnerable. It never engaged directly, never announced its presence. But in its wake, the oppressors would find small bone markers, identical to the monument on Antar 7, and would withdraw their forces, rather than test whether the legend still walked among the stars. One person, one will, and the universe that learned to respect both.